Mary Stoker-Smith, Chief Meteorologist Vince Candela, and Tom Pippin Sports. Because your news team matters.
The fiscal cliff impacts from Washington to Wisconsin, and just what would you do if the state's finances in the country went over that so-called fiscal cliff?
Fox 6's Mike Lowe spoke with the governor and other key lawmakers today about this very issue. Mike's in the newsroom with our political lowdown tonight. Mike?
Good evening, Ted and Mary. This week, Governor Walker will meet with President Obama at the White House to discuss the impact of the fiscal cliff on the states. Walker says he has some advice for Washington: act more like Wisconsin.
We took a $3.6 billion budget deficit, balanced it in 2 consecutive years, first time ever we've set money aside in the rainy day fund.
Governor Scott Walker says the looming fiscal cliff could stifle job creation in Wisconsin.
I'm scared to death that people in Washington are going to do something that would slow down the economic recovery we have.
The fiscal cliff is a mix of spending cuts and tax increases that kick in automatically if lawmakers don't reach a debt reduction deal by the end of the year.
This heightened rhetoric that that there's this cliff that we have no control over. This is a man-made problem.
It would mean income tax increases for almost all Americans, a prospect State Representative Dan Knodel says would have a devastating impact on the state budget.
It's going to be a factor. If the economy nationally decreases, it's going to affect us.
The fiscal cliff also triggers $1 trillion of spending cuts, with half coming from the defense budget. So what would it mean for Wisconsin, a state with no major military installations?
This is one of those odd instances where being low on the list in terms of the amount of federal money that comes back to the state might actually be a benefit for us because we have some of the least to lose.
One area of deep concern for Walker is the potential cuts to Medicaid.
If they just do a cut under the existing system, it would be very, very troubling.
I'm just concerned that
And Democrat John Richards says Walker should be seeking more federal dollars, not calling for cuts.
making sure that we use every federal dollar that's available to make our budget work.
Wisconsin companies like Tailored Label Products in Menominee Falls say the fiscal cliff is bad for business.
We're focused on our employees, and things outside of our control really are a distraction.
And the fiscal cliff negotiations seem to hinge on a single point: whether or not to raise taxes on the wealthiest Americans, those making more than $250,000 a year. President Obama says he campaigned on that issue and it would be a way to create revenue. Meantime, congressional Republicans say it would stifle the economy. They now have 29 days to reach a deal. Ted and Mary, back to you.
What was interesting to me is all the local lawmakers, if you will, were kind of saying, let's throw, bipartisanship has got to be part of this thing. Let's throw partisanship away. Am I reading in between the lines, or are they saying that's really got to be done and they're urging their national counterparts to do so?
Well, that's exactly what Governor Walker is going to bring that message, or that'll be part of the message he brings to Washington. And he'll actually meet with President Obama at the White House, talking about, we can't let the country go over the fiscal cliff because it will have impacts all the way down to the state level. And Governor Walker, I'm sure, will be talking about things like reaching a deal before that happens, and that's going to require Democrats and Republicans to work together.
All right, speaking of that trip, Mike, pack a bag. Thanks, Mike, in the newsroom. Mike is heading to Washington, D.C. this week for more on that so-called fiscal cliff. As he said, he'll be following the governor as he and other governors meet with the president Tuesday to talk about the states that'll be most affected if a deal is not made. You can watch for his stories from the nation's capital starting tomorrow night.
The game went on as scheduled in Kansas